Folks, do you suffer from Wargamer's block? Do you often sit staring over a map having set it all up, unable to move, not knowing what to do, afraid of making a mistake or a tactical error that could undo hours of preparation? You're not alone. Wargamer's block, that fear of making a mistake, of doing something wrong, is very common, particularly when playing large monster wargames. Fortunately, in this video, I've got a solution to what I'm calling Wargamer's block. And it's very similar to the solution for writer's block. You may be familiar with writer's block, where a writer will sit and stare at the pages, unable to write, unable to get the momentum, the thoughts processing in their mind. It's the same with Wargamer's block, really. You've read the rules, you know the context, you know the situation, but you just, for whatever reason, can't make that initial move. And I suffer from this a lot. So often I'll read through an entire rulebook, I will set up a map, I'll set up the counters, and I'll just sit there and look and think, where do I start? I'm not ready to start. I don't have the kind of the rules knowledge, the in-depth kind of practical rules knowledge to kind of feel confident getting started. I think a lot of this is confidence. Once you know a game, so I've been playing a lot of GTS over the past few months, and I've played a lot of Labatai. Once you know a game, you can get started pretty quickly. You set up and you go because you know what's going on. You can set up a plan. When you're new to a game, you don't know what could happen. And part of that, as a largely solo gamer, is the fear that, well, if I do something wrong on the first turn, is that going to destroy the whole game? And I'm reminded of Great War in Europe Deluxe, which is a huge 3-map game, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Near East, which took me a heck of a lot, hours and hours to set up. I read through the rulebook, and this is quite a heavy game for me, going back 8 years, 9 years maybe. I wasn't playing heavy games. Set it all up and started moving pieces around pretty quickly, and it very quickly resulted in a German victory. Germans just broke through on the Western Front, and it was over within a matter of hours, perhaps. Game over. It probably took me more time to set up than it did to play the game. And I sat on it for a bit. I was like, well, do I rewind a few turns? In the end, I just packed it all up, and I haven't played it since, unfortunately, sadly. Great game. Another example is Mark Herman's Empire of the Sun, which is a game I want to love. I read the rules for this about 10 years ago. And again, read the rules, studied the rules, tried to get started, and it's one of the few games that I've never succeeded in playing. I sat there and froze and didn't know what to do. Never got going, packed it up, put it away. There are many other examples like that where I'll set a game up, look at it, and sometimes it just gets packed up without playing. When I first started playing GTS, in fact, I had a learning scenario set up on my table for about 4 to 5 months. I read the rules, I studied the exclusive rules, I set up this learning scenario, and it was just a learning scenario which takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes to play, but I didn't know that at the time. And I froze. And it sat there. Eventually, I returned to this little map and burned through it, I guess you could say. I just attacked it. And I made a lot of mistakes, sure. And you may have seen my GTS The Greatest Day learning video. What do they call it? Introductory scenarios. Where I look back now, I made a lot of mistakes with the strategy, the tactics. But just by playing through those learning scenarios, and I love how GTS has these learning introductory scenarios to ease you into the rules and to kind of get you to learn the lessons yourself. They're short scenarios, they're quick scenarios, but by not sort of setting up the full map and then doing sort of all of Normandy, you're doing these sort of very compact little scenarios. You're learning how the game works without this huge commitment. The game kind of, this massive monster game, eases you into the rules and eases you into playing it. I think it's a great way. I love how GTS and MMP do that with their scenarios. At other times, we can lose momentum midway through a game. When I was playing La Bataille de Montséjon, it took me 3 months to play. I was trying to play about an hour or two each night. This is another big monster game, Battle of Waterloo or Montséjon. And Sometimes there would be sort of a lull in the fighting, and there's a lot going on here. It's a huge board, four big, what are they, 22 by 34 inch maps, I think. And during those lulls in the fighting and the kind of I guess there's sort of this administrative burden. You're just kind of moving units. There's not much fighting going on. Other times it's so intense and tiring, and there would be lulls in the fighting where I'd kind of lose momentum and just need to take a break. That certainly happened with Dresde. If you've seen my my playthrough of La Bataille de Dresde, it became a grind once the Allies reached the French defences. A lot of confusion with these stacks and very different terrain in every hex, and it lost the enjoyment factor for me at that point. It didn't become it wasn't much fun fighting in that sort of close terrain, and I sat on it for such a long time, just not wanting to return to it. Eventually, I kind of forced myself to play through kind of that midday and the afternoon hours, and by I think it was 3 p.m. On the second day, I was done and exhausted and had to stop. My momentum had run out. Something similar happened with the Saga of the 6 Airborne scenario. It starts off as a fascinating scenario: 6 Airborne, Horsa, Pegasus bridges, rushing to seize their objectives, relatively few German units out on the map. And then Kampfgruppe Look arrives, and there's this counter-attack and this rugged, this tough defence. But then, over the 8th, 9th and 10th of June, the Allies are dug in, entrenched, have good defensive modifiers, have picked their terrain, and it felt like the Germans were just butting their head against the wall. And I use this expression, fishing for zeros, in my video of that, because that's what basically the Germans were just rolling, trying to get zeros to hit these allies and build up cohesion hits. And there was very little manoeuvre. Way up in the northeast, you may have seen the 3, 4, 6, 7, 11th Division was in this bottleneck, and I lost a lot of momentum during that grind. I went for days without playing it, and this scenario, which should take maybe a day, it is a big scenario, ended up taking me 4 weeks, with sort of an activation shit here. Sometimes I'd play several turns in a row, kind of trying to build this momentum, before I eventually called it on the early hours of the 10th of June. But having said all this, and reflecting on this sort of momentum and struggling in kind of this Wargamer's block, kind of like writer's block, just sitting there freezing, the solution here is just to play. It's been said before. I think Kev from Big Board Gaming has said this in some of his videos. If you're sitting there frozen, if you don't know what to do, just start moving counters. Just start doing something. Even if you, what I often find when I'm teaching people a game, like Triumph of Chaos recently or Pericles, is run through a turn or two with an opponent and then reverse and set back up again. And just that sort of the first few turns of movement gets you to appreciate what's happening, gets you to appreciate the relationships between movement points and terrain, or strength points, combat points, and defending and combat and so forth. So yes, it's just like with writer's block. If you're writing and you're stuck, the solution is just to write. Start writing anything. I tell my students the same thing. If they're stuck and they don't know what to write, just start writing. It doesn't have to be your best material, but that process of writing and working through and getting your brain kind of working in that writing mode helps and gets you started. It's the same with gaming. If you're stuck over this massive game, if you've set up La Bataille de Mont-Saint-Jean or something big, Proud Monsters Deluxe or Case Blue, and you sit there frozen, just start moving counters around, and you'll get your brain kind of operating in that rule-based mindset. Now, of course, the other side of this is sometimes we're just not enjoying games, and that's often a cause for this Wargamer's block. It's not so much a block or an uncertainty, it's just a kind of a sense of frustration or boredom. Sometimes we can push through that, keep playing, get through those sort of lulls in the fighting and so forth. At other times, if you're truly not enjoying the game, stop. there's no shame in packing up, putting it away, getting something else out. This should be fun. If you're not enjoying a scenario or a game, find something that you do enjoy. Hopefully that helps. If you have any tips for sort of overcoming this block, make a comment below, and enjoy your gaming.